Evening, Mayor and members of council. Thank you so much for making this night possible, as we do have some information to present to council, and we know that timelines are very short right now. So thank you for gathering and giving an opportunity for us to extend some additional information. We're going to start right out. I'm going to explain kind of the process we're going to take you on really quick, just so you know what we're doing. There has been some information requested of staff, so we're going to start out by just presenting that information. It might seem a little bit disconnected because it might be just kind of a variety of topics, but what we're trying to do is make sure that from the last council meeting or any other inquiries that we've had, that we're presenting any requested information. So we're going to try to get that out of the way first. Once we're done with that, we're going to present an alternate funding mechanism tonight that hasn't been discussed yet. So we wanted to be sure to get this information to council and to the public and give time to mull that over and review those options, present any other questions you might have back to staff, in the hopes that if we go into Tuesday night on the 18th, that you've had ample opportunity to get any information you need from staff or any other sources to make a decision. For the sake of tonight, I want to use some reference points. I'm going to give 3 options to you. And as we talk through the evening, we're going to refer to these as option 1, 2, and 3. I want to explain what they are so we're all on the same page. So option 1, when we speak tonight, is going to be referring to retaining and bolstering the Valley Center Fire Department. So again, option 1, retaining and bolstering Valley Center Fire. Option 2 is joining Sedgwick County Fire District 1. Option 2 would be joining Fire District 1. And then option 3 is going to be retaining and bolstering Valley Center Fire with a combination of funding mechanisms from property tax and sales tax revenues. 3 options on the table tonight. Option 1, 2, and 3. And as we present, we will refer to them in that way. A couple of quick updates as we begin. Valley Center City Council did send an official request to Sedgwick County Fire Board in request of an official extension of the mutual and auto aid agreements. They did have a meeting yesterday, and that topic was heard. Both of those agreements, auto and mutual aid, have officially been extended to September 23rd, 2026. Also, just for reference, we were also told when we submitted that request that we would not need to request an extension for mutual aid because they were already willing to entertain a contract for mutual aid, which staff has had that now since the town hall meeting. We have provided comments back to Sedgwick County on the mutual aid agreement. It's a 3-year mutual aid agreement. Their legal is reviewing that. We don't have those comments back yet. So that is under both parties' legal review now. We still intend to bring that document forward. It is on the agenda for Tuesday, the 18th. That will be dependent upon all the legal finalizing their review. The other thing, I always provide disclaimers. I'm going to do that again just for the sake of record. Tonight, we have a bunch of information for you like we normally do. They are projections. They are simply that. When you do budget figures or when you are staffing or when you're doing anything, you're modeling and you're projecting. So anything that we have done, we're projecting at full staff, full-time employees, and incentivized part-time employees. Lloyd's going to explain a little bit more of that in just a moment. Obviously, when we have projected numbers, we've considered that to be at full staff. And you may not always be at full staff. So we understand that, but the intent is to be at full staff, because if we're not, then we don't have the safety numbers that we need. So again, just for clarifications. And then also operational costs are estimations based off of how we have operated previously. So based on prior usage numbers. Just some disclaimers. The numbers we give are not guarantees that whatever direction the council should decide to go, that on year 3, that's particularly what a taxpayer is going to pay. We are not saying that. We are saying that we have modeled some projections for you based on a lot of variables that we do expect to change, but it's a baseline for you to work off of for this evening. And with that, I would like to go ahead and welcome our Public Safety Director, Newman.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So as the City Administrator said, there were questions in the last council meeting, and we wanted to clarify some of those and maybe go into a little more detail just to make sure that everything is clear. And so I'll start off by describing what our current structure looks like. Currently, we're authorized and funded 6 full-time positions or firefighters. We only have 5 at the moment. We have 1 position, that being the fire chief, that is open. Part-timers, we're not capped, but we currently sit at 13. Out of that 13, we have a medical captain whose primary duties is medical, as it sounds, no firefighting duties. And we have an assistant fire chief and 2 supervisors. The remaining are firefighters. This model, when fully staffed, runs 2 shifts of 3, with the chief typically supervising 1 shift and a full-time lieutenant supervising the other. They work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. After 7 p.m., the supervisor working that day is paid to be on call. The firefighters are not paid to be on call, but like the supervisor, they're the ones typically responding back when the pagers go off and the calls come out. All 3 that work that day do take home fire vehicles. We have 2 pickups and an Explorer. They're marked units, lights, sirens. That way, if there's an emergency call, they can respond back to the station, red light and siren, and then they respond to the call from there. The part-time firefighters at this time, they receive the same pages, and if they're available, they respond, and that's when their pay kicks in. They get paid by the hour. The chain of command for the current structure is myself as the head of the agency. The fire chief acts as the operations manager. We have supervisors both on the full-time and part-time. And that's currently basically how we run today. Option A that is there that we're looking at would be to hire 4 full-time personnel, additional personnel on top of what we have, chief, supervisors, and firefighters. Full-time chief position, which again is currently open. This person would continue to serve as operations manager as well as assist in administrative functions. This would be your typical hours would be like a Monday through Friday, daytime or business hours. And then the remaining full-time personnel would then go into, we would have 3 shifts of 3 personnel. It would become a 24/7 department with living quarters, sleeping quarters at the station. And those 3 would be the primary firefighters responding out. Each of those shifts, like we currently operate, has 1 supervisor who is typically in the passenger seat. You got 1 firefighter that acts as a driver, and then the firefighter that sits in the back. They all have their own duties or their duties that they operate under. So under this plan, we plan to hire additional part-time firefighters. With the 24/7 station, we think we would do a hybrid. So there could be days of the week where we would want to staff 2 part-timers, 2 additional personnel on staff to be at the station, respond from the station, and they would be paid an hourly wage. We can't possibly do that 365 days a year. So we would be looking at our busy days of the week, special events going on, things like that, to schedule those days when that happens. And that would be an additional supervisor, a part-time supervisor, and a part-time firefighter. What that gets us is 2 trucks out the door. That gets our engine out the door. That gets the squad out the door. Or if someone else shows up, that gets our engine tender out the door if a 3rd firefighter was to show up. So the days that we're not staffing them at the station, the plan that we were talking about was to pay a stipend to make it more attractive, but yet allow them to be able to stay at home with their families or visit with their families, do things. So we would pay a stipend or a set amount for them, to be able to schedule them, and their promise then to respond to calls when they come out. And that's something we've talked to some of our current part-time employees, and that's something that excites them. They all say they would be willing to do that. So, but that stipend then would guarantee us a certain number of people responding. So the chief, we would also, on option A, the chief, not every day of the week, but most days of the week, would serve as the on-call command person. If you recall, that's one of the concerns from Fire District 1 is not always having a command person. The chief would assume those duties. He can't possibly do that 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So we would utilize our other supervisors, captains, assistant chief to help fill those positions. And they would also get a stipend to then be able to respond straight to the scene and take command. All these things we believe would bolster the safety of our department as well as the safety in the community. Option B is very similar to option A. The only difference, and I might add that Assistant Chief Tormey worked hard coming up with this, and this was an idea that he proposed to myself and the city administrator as a way to try to save a little bit more money. This option is very similar to A, with the exception that the fire chief, his suggestion would be that the fire chief would be a part-time position, which would save, let me get this piece of paper here, that would save it was a little over $108,000 from option A. And I might go back up. Currently, we'll backtrack a little bit. With benefits, we're currently looking at $923,000 a year for our current department and structure the way we do it. Option A would then take us up to the $1.661 million that we've discussed and talked about previously. Option B would take in that chief's position to a part-time position. Again, would save us $108,000. That would make that $1.553 million per year. I'll keep going and then I'll come back once I'm done with my presentation just to see if you have any questions. I think unless we're going to wait till the end. So response times was another thing that was asked last time. And I know some might have received an email or all might have received that email or should have received that email. But our average response times from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., which is again when we're working and on duty, is 3.9 minutes. From 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., the average goes up to 7.88 minutes. And after midnight, between midnight and 6 a.m., those calls, as you could imagine, take a little bit longer. Typically, the guys are probably in bed at that time. Our average response time goes to 9.21 minutes. Thursdays are our busiest days right now, and Sundays have been our slowest days. And the last question that came up was our bolstering timeline. So this, again, is an estimation. As the city administrator said, most of the numbers or timelines would be, but we'd be looking at 30 days for bidding to do the construction work at the building, 2 weeks for awarding the bid. We would give 60 days to complete the work. We would start advertising for the full-time and the part-time positions right away during this process. Typically, we leave it open for at least a month or until the positions are filled. Rarely do I like to wait that full month. So as the qualified candidates come in, we start setting up interviews right away. Candidates who are selected to go through or advance, it will go through a background check prior to any conditional offers. I would anticipate up to 2 weeks for background checks. It's a little quicker than the law enforcement side. That takes us a little longer. There's a lot more involved in that one. So I think we could get backgrounds done in less than 2 weeks for the firefighters. Once backgrounds are complete, we're satisfied with the backgrounds. Any conditional offer that we decided to make, once accepted by the applicant, we would then set up the POET testing as part of our insurance, the city's insurance for the employees who came in. We participate in the POET program, which is a physical and drug test. And so that I anticipate to take 1 to 2 weeks. It kind of depends on their scheduling often. They have 3 locations, east, west, and south. And it just depends. Usually we take the first available. We would then, once we got the all clear from the POET test, we would then sit down, talk to them, and work out a start date. I like, if they're currently working a job, I know I like getting a 2 weeks notice if somebody's leaving. So typically that's what I suggest to the applicant. And most of the time that's what people want to do. So we're looking at another 2 weeks there. The onboarding process, paperwork, signing forms and being sworn in, we'd say 2 days or up to 2 days to complete that. And then the training period. So we currently have a training period that we put firefighters through when we first hire them. That's 4 to 6 weeks, depending on their qualifications and what they already have. So that would take anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. So depending on, how quick the qualified candidates came in, the process with the bidding and getting the work done at the station, we'd be looking at a total of 4 to 6 months during the entire process. And I believe I will stand for any questions.
Any questions? Matt?
You brought up about redoing the station to accommodate sleeping over or sleeping quarters, whatever you want to call them.
Yes.
Is that station even per code? Can you have people sleeping in the basement with no windows in the basement?
So we actually, it's a very good question. We had the state fire, we had our own code enforcement officer come and look at it first, the city's code enforcement. And then we called the state fire marshal out to look at it. They were satisfied with the 2 forms or 2 paths of egress from the station or from the basement. They were satisfied with that and said that they would pass that. It would meet the code.
And if we do, you said they'll be 24/7. Will that be 48 on, 96 off? Will they still be doing the same schedule the guys are doing now?
No, it won't be the same schedule now. It won't be 12-hour shifts. Right now, I think the current firefighters that we have, they would like to see the 48, 96, 48 on, 96 off.
And then so this is still based on if part-timers show up, correct?
This would still, we'd want to incentivize to try to get part-timers to show up.
We have 14 now. How many actually show up in a year, 2-year period?
That would be dependent on the time, and I don't have that, those numbers or those sheets to be able to give you those hours right now. There are times where we have a plethora of part-timers show up, and there are times when we have 0 part-timers show up. A majority of the calls we get, I would tell you that there are no part-timers showing up. Those are the medical calls. Those are the day-to-day calls, accidents, lines down, things like that we don't typically anticipate them showing up. Structure fires are typically when you get more of the part-timers showing up. It's not to say they don't show up on the other calls. Structure fires are typically the calls that they would show for.
I know those part-timers that show up, how many have full-time jobs somewhere else?
I can't say for all of them. A majority of our part-time personnel are career firefighters. Our medical captain is full-time with Sedgwick County EMS, supervisor with Sedgwick County EMS. So a majority of them, I would say probably all of them have full-time jobs. A majority of them are career firefighters.
I've got more, but I'll let someone else go.
Amy?
Captain, I had a question, or Chief, sorry. I had a question on the incentivized part-time. You mentioned that the model has a $50K increase to incentivize the part-time and that you would have 2 on call on the busier days. How many days out of the year, say, did you base that model on where you'd have 2 on call?
The way we figured and the reason for that increase from the prior presentation or previous presentation is I went in and figured the numbers at a couple of different ways. I figured having 2 part-time firefighters, one supervisor, one firefighter, working actually at the station, full shift, 2 days a week. And I figured it at 3 days a week. And then on those days that we don't have anyone there, I figured 2 people receiving the stipend. And so every day of the week is what I was planning or hoping for. As Councilmember Stan pointed out, that may not always happen. But that was the projections. That's what the goal that we would be aiming for, is to have them on call with a stipend or at the station.
So 365 days a year, but it's either at the station or at home, but 2 always, correct?
Yes, at least 2.
Okay. And if
And
they,
that doesn't include, there's a third if you do the command position as well for the stipend.
and if they're at home, it's mandated that they come in if they're being incentivized, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
And then their hourly wage would kick in as soon as they came in.
Thank you.
Ken?
Lloyd, do any other municipalities ever train police department to administer medical calls? Is that something that ever happens, or is it strictly fire?
So we do go through basic first aid and CPR, as well as the AED of the police officers. And I can't speak for every agency. I think a majority of them do that. I know that's what we do. We do the basic first aid, CPR, and AED.
Is that something that would allow our fire to respond if there was another call, that if police could respond to a medical call if there was a fire call? Is that something that would help our structure, our
So
public safety?
once they get on scene and establish patient contact, no, we can't.
Okay.
The police can't take over for them. They have to stay there until they're relieved by EMS or another fire crew.
Okay. And it's kind of piggybacking on what Matt said, is there anything that we can do different with the shifts as far as, are we set on 24? What is it? 24 on, 48 off?
So, what Councilmember Stam had asked, a lot of departments across the nation, I think, including Fire District 1, has looked at that. It's actually 48 on now. So you work 48 hours straight, and then you get 96 hours off. So you work 2 days straight, all day, all night, and then 4 days off. The 4 days off, there's studies that suggest, and I don't have those studies in front of me. There's studies that suggest, your body gets to recuperate a little more because you're getting 4 days off. And so you get to recover more, longer recovery period.
Is that, do the firefighters that are off in this scenario, would they be able to respond
Yes.
if we had a structure fire?
Yes. They would be on the clock then. They would be getting paid to respond as well. That happens now. The way we're set up, it's the guys that are leaving shift that respond back automatically. And that's going to be for a majority of the calls we get, which I think I've stated before, a majority of our calls are medical. But when there's a structure fire or a need or a second call, because occasionally we do get 2 medical calls at one time, the other shifts, if available, will respond back.
Okay.
So they would be able to, yes.
We're not strictly relying on the part-time pool. The other 6 that are not on duty then could respond if they were
Absolutely.
available.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, Matt?
Back to the stipend. So they're off duty, but they're still tied to the job, even though they're off duty, to where they can't go to a movie with the wife or go out and eat. They're still tied to being at home if they're off duty, but still required to
Correct.
come in.
Correct. The stipend, we think what that does is, they're getting paid a set amount or predetermined amount for, if they know they're not planning to go to the movies or go out to dinner outside of Valley Center, they can sign up for that shift, earn that money, and come in, if a call goes out. And so currently the way it is, there is no incentive, there is no stipend. The only time they get paid is if they show up, and they get paid per hour. It's not a minimum number of hours. If they're there on one call, it takes 1 hour, they get paid their, 1 hour's worth of pay. And so to incentivize that allows those that are, they may be coming off a shift from, their career job. They know they're not going to go anywhere. They can sign up for that open on-call position, earn money, but yet still get to be home, eat dinner with the family, see the kids, do, mow the yard, housework, whatever they want to do. But they're still, they're getting incentivized or paid to do that. They're getting paid to actually respond to calls if it comes out, more than their hourly wage.
I was on call when I worked for the city of Salina, and that was the worst job I've ever had. I was on call for 2 weeks. I couldn't go do nothing. I was tied to that phone. If it rang, I had to answer it or I got in trouble. I don't like the people being tied to the job when they're off the job. That's their time for family life, vacations, do what you want. That's just not a quality of life.
Yeah, they would be signing up for it. It would be their choice.
But stuff pops up.
It does.
I wasn't going to go to Salina. I actually changed my plans because of this. Within the day, I had to go to Salina. That's why I'm dressed again, because I rushed back to get here. Stuff changes. People's schedules change.
Gina?
In restructuring hours for the firefighters, if we went to 3 8-hour shifts, we wouldn't need to provide sleeping quarters, would we?
I think you're right. If we had 3 8-hour shifts, to do that and cover that and allow for days off, I think we'd be talking about, I haven't put pen to paper yet, but I think we'd be talking about more employees than that.
Well, I'm sure.
And especially, and then, covering and so especially to get the 3, I think to have the 3 on there, part of the reason that's important to us, and we did it before, is on a structure fire, you want the engine out the door first. To get the engine out the door, you have to have a minimum of 3 firefighters on the engine. And so going to 3 8-hour shifts a day, I think we'd be talking about a lot higher number to get the personnel we would need to be able to do that.
But we need to increase personnel anyway, right?
Yes, I think we'd be talking about more personnel than what we're talking about now.
But no
With
remodeling.
the number we're talking about now, we could maybe do that if you wanted 1 firefighter on a shift. Maybe. I would have to put pen to paper. Maybe we could do that, but we wouldn't have 3 firefighters on each shift.
Put a pen to it and see.
I will. I can tell you when I first started for the police department 30 years ago Monday, well, 31 years counting my part-time in November, but 30 years full-time, we did 3 8-hour shifts. It was 1 person per shift. We weren't, and we had, I think when I started, we had 7 or 8 full-time. So I think to do that with full-time personnel, we're going to be looking at probably double of what I'm asking for now or what we're talking about now.
Or the 2.
But I can certainly put pen to paper. I will do that.
2 and a part-time with a stipend.
I can put pen to paper and report back
Curious,
Tuesday.
Ben?
I think part of that is the structure. We have to be similar structure schedules to what surrounding fire departments are. We're going to not have, I mean, the 3 8-hour shifts doesn't make any sense because you don't have any days off.
I don't think we're going to have
Right.
to be, I don't think we have to be similar to the ones around us. I think the biggest challenge besides I think we would need a lot more personnel than we're asking for or talking about now. The other probably greatest hurdle we would face is hiring firefighters that would want to work that schedule. Besides their desire to serve people and to do this job, I think one of the benefits of firefighters, full-time career firefighters, is the schedule. And they like that schedule. I can tell you, my current firefighters don't like their schedule right now. We've had those discussions. That's why I know, they would really like to see the 4896. And so I think our greatest hurdle would be finding firefighters that would want to work 8-hour shifts.
That's what I was going to, is that we
Okay.
need to do a 4896 to retain and attract firefighters, but also the math, I don't understand the math on 3/8. There's not any, that's 9 people every day, and there's not any days off with that. Like you were saying, that's double, like you're gonna, maybe not double, but you're gonna have to have a lot more
We would have to have a lot.
employees to have that. And I don't think that's a savings. I mean, we don't know what the cost is to retrofit for living quarters, but I just think we need to stay what's going to attract and retain firefighters, what schedule is, and not demand, obviously the one we have now is, you said, is not as attractive as some of the surrounding schedules.
Correct.
How many part-time, going back to the on-call, how many part-time do we have currently?
13,
13.
including,
How many
our medical
How many
officer.
are you proposing that we have sign up to be on call at a time?
2 to 3.
Okay.
2, we would like the command for sure, and then 2 additional a part-time supervisor and part-time firefighter. That model is cheaper than actually having them come in and work a 24-hour shift. And so if we could get a third or second firefighter to go along with that supervisor, that's bonus. That's still cheaper than actually having them work the full 24-hour shift.
And we would have 3 on duty with our proposed schedule,
Yes.
and then 2 on call. What determines them responding? Is that something that whoever's in command sends out? Is that something that dispatch sends out, or how? Okay.
Dispatch notifies. They send the call out. And they
Based
give
on
a
whatever
couple
the
of
call
different ways.
is.
We have pagers. We have apps on our phone. I have that app on mine. So every time the fire department gets dispatched to any type of call, we get alerts. They get alerts. They get them multiple ways. I get them through the app.
So let's say that there was a medical emergency. They're not going to get paged to show up for that. If we have 3,
They would get that same page.
they would get the page, but
They would
what
get the
determines,
page.
they would respond no matter what.
That would be up to the supervisor on. I think the supervisor on the shift could disregard them if they chose, depending on the type of call. But then they would be available should another medical call come out while they're on that call.
And how,
And they would be expected to respond to that if we were already on another call, the full-time guys or the crew that's working.
I apologize if I'm getting into the logistics of this too much, but how does the supervisor disregard? Is that
Radio.
through the dispatch?
They could do it through dispatch. They could do it through the radio. I mean, yeah.
Okay. All right.
And they may go to they may make it to the station and just not respond from the station.
Okay. Thank you.
Amy?
You just mentioned 2 to 3 people on call, but the model that you created is based on 2, right? With the
Yes.
50K, okay.
Well, two to respond as a supervisor and firefighter, plus the third as a command. That could be the full-time chief. That could be one of our other supervisors. But so there is that person that would be on call as well, the command person.
And that's part of the figure that you have for the
Yes.
50K. Maybe you can't answer this. Does Sedgwick County rely on on-call people to respond and try to meet the NFPA guidelines?
Now they respond on aid from other agencies.
Okay, and our response time right now between 7 p.m. and 6 a.m. is anywhere from 7.8 to 9.2 minutes.
Yes, and that is due to them having to respond from home
Right.
to the station and then to the call.
Okay.
Because when on duty, it's under 4 seconds, or 4 minutes, sorry.
Thank you.
Matt?
On what Amy just said, that time frame when them guys are at home and coming to the fire station, do they all have to wait till all three get there? Or does the first one get there, take the fire engine out or whatever's needed? Do they got to wait till they all show up?
They would wait until, it depends on the truck. So if they're taking the squad out, they would wait for that second person. There'd be 2 people in that. Tender would be the same way, brush truck. If we're taking out the engine tender, then they're going to wait for a third person.
Any other questions or comments of Lloyd? Thank you, Lloyd.
Thank you.
Apologize, it's kind of hard to read. I'm going to read from my notes here. What I've done on the next, I'm going to display 3 different models coming up. The first one, and I apologize, this is a little hard to read. What we've tried to do is take a look at what the budget impact might look like for the next 5 years. And starting off with 17.48 is the budget year for 2027. That is what we think it would take to maintain our current fire department in the city of Valley Center. Now, I know that's a different number that we've been hearing before and the previous weeks. What we have started doing is moving to 2027 dollars. Everything in the previous meeting in Town Hall, we talked in 2026 dollars. There's really no reason to talk in 2026 dollars anymore. So I've now moved everything to our new valuation, and we're going to start talking 2027 dollars, which does change the figures a little bit. What I've done to do on that top row, though, you'll see that it goes from 17.4, and then it starts climbing up a little bit. What I have attempted to do is break out our entire fire department and try to start predicting what the cost increases would be by year. So salaries are a pretty predictable rate based on what we've done in the past. A lot of incremental costs, I only use 2%. The one that continues to rise for us at a pace vastly exceeding the city or the county of Sedgwick County is health insurance. They have 2,800 people on their health insurance plan, 2,800 employees and their families on that. We have about 60 entire employees with children and everything on our plan. So we're much more susceptible to the volatility of the healthcare market. I did a 12% increase estimation on that going up per year. Other things that we put in there, things like the bond payment, I put in the exact amount that we're going to have to pay for our fire truck each of the next 5 years. Anyway, as you can see, it starts climbing up. So what I wanted council to see that it is going to climb from the 17s into the 18s over the next 5 years. Now, what does that do in dollars? Again, what I tried to do, I believe, especially with what happened last week with the election results, we're heading toward a situation where we are going to be 3% cap next year. Now, there's 2 ways that can go. When they were talking last year about capping the cities, the initial discussion was bond and interest would be excluded from that, or would be included in that number. In other words, if the city had a $100 million valuation, they'd have 103 next year, and that includes bond and interest. The later discussions moved toward excluding that bond and interest. So what I tried to start doing is a valuation, turning that into dollars going forward under that model that hopefully it will be excluded, and bond and interest can kind of sit off to the side. So what does that do as far as a resident and their actual or the dollars that they're going to pay? Currently, a citizen of Valley Center on a $250,000 house pays that $302 per year. As you can see, I've started estimating going forward. The next line down, what that would be if we kept it in-house under the discussions we've been having. That would jump to $501 per year for a difference of $199.53. On a commercial building, that goes from $789 to $1,309 for a $520 increase. So you can kind of start seeing going forward in time what that impact would be financially for a citizen. Now, the Sedgwick County Fire Department, this gets a little harder. You can see I've taken 16.754 and I've moved it across. Their communication to us is they believe that they can get down to that rate and hold it for an extended period of time. Now, I'm not sure how they're going to do that, but again, that's the message that they're giving to us. So I'm not really trying to take their rate up over time. I'm just kind of moving it across, which does lead toward leading residential and commercial more to flat rate. Now, it's not going to be a perfectly flat rate because what happens, it's based on the entire valuation of the county and the entire valuation of the city. It's rather impossible for me to figure out what Valley Center's total valuation will increase over the next 5 years. I can get an estimate. Historically, it's around 6%, but it does jump. Last year, we were over into the double digits. This year, we came back down to single digits. The county, though, is a combination of all the different cities inside Sedgwick County. So some years they can actually exceed our valuation increase growth, and some years it's well below that, just depending on what cities they have. For instance, if we grew at 8% for a year, but Hayesville grew at 20%, that's going to push their total valuation up at a rate higher than ours because, again, they're averaging everybody together. So what I kind of did is just excluded out trying to predict about the city of Valley Center and Sedgwick County's increases. They're going to move into the same direction as each other, pretty close, but that's why you get a flat number. The reality is these numbers will slightly increase over time based on what those valuations come in, but it's a variable I don't know, so we didn't put that in there. So what it comes down to at the bottom is the difference in the total difference between what we currently have and what this new model would be. You can start seeing in 2027, the average citizen is going to pay $20 more, and that would climb to $58 more by the end of 2031. A commercial, and again, that's per $250,000 in residential value. So a $500,000 house would be twice that. A $300,000 commercial building jumps from $53 up to $148 in year 5. Does everybody kind of understand that? I know this is kind of getting down into the weeds, but I want to at least give you a general idea of the directions these are going to go based on the different models that we talked about tonight. Does that make sense, or do you need to go over any of that again? One? Okay. The next page is the exact same model, but what I've done is in 2031, we started budgeting for a $5 million fire building to be built in Valley Center. Now, again, this is us not joining the county, so we would be responsible for taking care of that. As you can see, it greatly increases that impact that a citizen's going to pay in that 5th year, jumping up from $46 the year before to over $150 in that 5th year in 2031, and a similar growth rate of almost triple for actually over triple for a $300,000 business. So again, kind of wanted to give you an idea of the direction it would go and what that on payment would look like. We took a $5 million building. We averaged a 3.7% interest rate over 20 years. It comes out at approximately a $354,000 a year flat payment, approximately. That's heavily dependent on what interest rate we could get at the time when we financed that building. The last one is just kind of giving you an update. Last month, I showed you a very complex spreadsheet on Valley Center's revenues and expenses coming in the years to come. That first column is what kind of my summary statement was, and we had $1.5 million in unfunded obligations at the end of that model. If we moved, I'm sorry, you said, okay. If we tried to keep it in-house, what we showed you last time is we're going to start getting into a mill rate that's vastly higher than our neighboring cities. and you start running the risk of possibly having growth slow down on people that would want to move to Valley Center to take on that additional tax obligation in their property taxes. So what I just did was, all I did was take that base model and I moved it back one negative direction. That's what that middle column is. As you can see, we go from 1 million to, what is that? I can't even read my own writing, 2.8, I believe. Kind of gives you an idea of where it goes. The third model is me trying to add in one negative notch back and try to pay for that new building in the 5th year. Honestly, the model just gets really out of whack, and I actually wrote down there at the bottom, it's just not a viable option for us. We cannot take on keeping our fire department in the city and put in a new building with the amount of debt that we have coming on. Now, we can do that closer to the mid 2030s, but we can't do that until that time frame. So any questions? I know I'm kind of getting in the weeds here a little bit. I'm going to talk right now, and then I'm going to take a break and talk a little bit further after Cinder shares a new idea with you. But I kind of want to give you an idea, and I know this is kind of technical, but give you an idea of where we're at from a finance standpoint on some different options that we've been discussing.
Matt?
And maybe you're going to talk about this. Before you talked about the TIF district, where stuff slows down, what we owe, and you talk about the modeling that company done for us. Did you ever look at the next step up, what that looks like, or is that something you're going to talk about when you come back up?
In other words, the TIF district takes off and an optimistic scenario?
Yeah.
I can take it up a notch. I did not bring that here tonight.
Okay.
Because again, most of the discussion right now is on trying to keep our fire department in-house, and our mill rate's going to be very, very high. It would be unlikely that we would have increased taxes and increased growth at the same time. Those two normally are they don't normally move together.
Amy?
Glenn, if you said this, I apologize, but on the previous slide, when you were showing the differences, does that also include our bond and interest debt in addition to the fire, or is that just the difference with the fire?
The bond and interest debt that affects the fire. So I've built in there the current fire truck, the new fire truck. This is staffing up to the levels that Lloyd talked about. This is going under all the assumptions that Lloyd just said, and try to start predicting into the future what that mill impact would be with or without a building.
So it does include? Thank you.
Just the fire
Thank you.
expenses. No, this is water treatment plants, stuff like that. None of that is in anything I'm going to share tonight. We're only trying to keep fire as its own topic.
Thank you.
Matt?
You brought up staffing, that's figured in there. What kind of a wage are you figuring for them? What they make now? Because I remember someone from the county in the 10 hall meeting say the starting wage for Central County is $60,000. Do our people even make $60,000 a year?
Lloyd and I did quite a bit of modeling. I'll let him talk a little bit further about that. But we tried to make ourselves competitive. Lloyd, why don't you take it away? Because I know that this is really more.
With some of the modeling we've done, yes, it would be in the upper 50s, lower 60s, depending on the position.
Does it take account how long they've been here, or to move everyone up kind of even, different levels, or?
It moves, up. So the yearly wage, the hourly wage has to move down. Otherwise, we will be the highest paid fire department in the state of Kansas. The hourly wage moves down, but the yearly wage goes up because of the number of hours a year they work. And yeah, currently, the ones we currently have, it's going to be, there's going to be seniority in there that's factored into that. If they're a supervisor, what level of supervisor, all that's factored in.
Any other questions? Is it Clint? Okay, thank you, Clint.
Oh, wrong way. Oh, you went back one, didn't you? Sorry. Okay, apologies. Here I am. Okay, so next we're going to review an alternate funding mechanism, focused on still the bolstering option. So this is going to be option number 3. So this is bolstering Valley Center Fire Department with a combination revenue source from property tax and sales tax. So I'm going to go kind of down the line here. So basically, this is an alternate funding source that's shifting from 100% use of property tax dollars to a combined model introducing sales tax revenue. It would be a revenue source to fund to the 24/7 services with less property tax increase to the Valley Center property owners. As Clint just mentioned, that would be a less potential for negative economic impact and a negative impact to the TIF district debt modeling, as you saw just a moment ago, to the potential of housing sales decline if that does or does not intend to, if that actually turns out to be a possibility or not. We're not sure. We just know there's the potential for that economic impact there. So this would be an opportunity to lessen that impact. A 1% sales tax would generate approximately $950,000 annually. City sales tax rates do have to be established in half-cent increments. In this case, a half cent then would generate about $475,000 approximately. We need 1.661 million for that base model to bolster for the 24/7 station. We generate currently 923,000 off of the current 10.65 mils that we're levying. So what we're looking at here is how do we cover the difference instead of levying additional property taxes? We know that we have the 923,000. We need about another 730,000 in order to bolster, whether that's A or B. We know there is a little bit of a cost difference there, but we're kind of sticking with the A numbers right now until it's determined that we could utilize the part-time chief position. But I do want you to keep that in mind. Since that's obviously more than $475,000, we're going to have to levy the 1 cent if that turns out to be an option. Since the sales tax is making up the difference, even with the 1% sales tax, obviously we still need to levy the 10.56 mils, the $923,000, that base volume of funds that we're working with. And here's a kind of a couple of reasons why, just to solidify that. Not only the obvious reason that we need it because we need to make up the difference in funding, but here's a few things I want you to keep in mind as to why the 10.56 mils are still going to be necessary. And number one, the sales tax, even if we get this, I'm going to explain that process in a minute, but if we get that on the November election ballot and go through the legal processes necessary, it wouldn't take effect until April 1 of 2027 to start that revenue generation. So we're still going to need to operate off of Valley Center's mills through the first quarter of 2027. Number two, obviously we don't know exactly how much the sales tax is going to generate. We've got really good numbers off of that because we have the 1 cent sales tax now for the recreation facility. So we do have those numbers and we've watched that trending, but it is a variable. And then number three, keeping the ad valorem the same will prevent the reduction in the county sales tax ratio that I had brought up earlier. Which is a revenue source that we do currently rely on, half and half to operate the streets department and half to offset the mill levy in the general fund. So a side note on that county sales tax ratio, obviously the same principle would apply in reverse. So right now we're talking about we still need to levy the 10.56 mils to not offset that ratio. So again, in reverse, if you bolster and you bolster fully with ad valorem, it's going to generate a higher sales tax ratio. And then if you go with Sedgwick County Fire District 1 and you reduce your mill levy, it's going to create a lower sales tax ratio. Just some things kind of to keep in mind on that. Unlike property tax revenue, a sales tax would avoid the limitations that are looming right now with the potential tax cap at the next legislative session. So that kind of skirts that particular issue. Additionally, just for clarification purposes, because there are two different types of sales tax, you can have a general purpose sales tax or a special purpose sales tax. This would be a general purpose sales tax for the purpose of public safety use, dedicated to the funding the operations of the public safety departments, that is police and fire. It would be a permanent shift in operational dollars from ad valorem for just that excess amount, from ad valorem to the sales tax. So you would not necessarily want to put a sunset date on that. Here's the difference in those sunset dates, just for clarification purposes. Sometimes when a city is proposing a project, that project would usually have an end date when you would fulfill the financial obligation of that project. You don't want the sales tax to continue after that. That wouldn't be an appropriate use of funds. In this particular case, this is not a project that has an end funding limit. This would be a continual ongoing operational cost necessity, because if you sunset the sales tax and you're generating about $1 million on sales tax, the year that it sunsets is the year you have to add $1 million into your ad valorem property tax. If you don't, then you'd have to immediately, it would challenge the ability to continue to fund the fire department or pay the staff the wages of the firefighters we have on staff. So it is, of course, council preference. If you feel it's still important to put a sunset date on it and allow the community to make that decision again, you're certainly able to do that as well. We just want to make sure that we're being very clear that since it's for operational costs and not a project, the impact to that would be the inability to continue to operate that department without that. Let's talk a little bit. I showed you that it would generate about $950,000. We need about $730,000 to operate to bolster the fire department. So what do you do with the rest of that? Because that's generating a little bit more than is needed just to bolster. So here's a few thoughts on that. The first year, because remember, we haven't talked much about it, but we still need about $300,000. That number's getting a little bit less, but about $300,000 of startup costs in 2026 that are non-budgeted. So you could use that as a mechanism to pay back some of that fund, because we're going to have to take that out of somewhere in reserves. So that's a possibility. Or, I'm using the word or here because we're not talking about very much money. The difference between $730,000 and $950,000 is just over $200,000. There's not a lot of money there from the context of some of these ideas, so please keep that in mind. But another option would be, since this is for public safety purposes, and since we are facing such a debt responsibility right now that is causing an increase in mill levies, another strategic way to look at this income generation is to redirect some of the current debt obligation or the current mills that we're shouldering right now for the citizens. Anything that's an appropriate use of those funds would be anything police or fire related. And so as you can see on that first bullet point under number 2 there, with some of that excess money, we could pay the current fire truck payment out of which is right now being paid out of bond and interest. So instead, we could pay that with the sales tax generation. That would bring our bond and interest number that we had this year down just a little bit. And then additionally, we could amend the ordinance language that for our emergency equipment ordinance that requires us to levy 1 mil a year for emergency equipment. It's actually kind of shrunk down to the 0.965 mil. And I think that's probably from the R&R, but we're looking into that. But its ordinance says a mil. Since it's for emergency equipment and that is only for police and fire use, you could actually kind of amend that ordinance and allow that language to be paid out of sales tax revenue when available first instead, which then, did I do that? Oh. Okay, there we go. Sorry. I was like, I didn't change it. Let's see. So we would have to amend the ordinance to pay that with sales tax when available first instead. But then that would allow you to reallocate an additional mill that's that's being used for that emergency equipment fund and use that to also reduce our bond and interest. So right there, you got the potential of reducing that big bond and interest that we're looking at this year down by 1.651 mils. I'll explain in a minute here some other ways that we could maybe reduce that down. And then the third thing that we'd look at is that a portion could be used toward the payment of a new fire station in the future. That payment, even at a $5 million station. And just so you know, I know we've talked about different station numbers. We don't exactly know the cost, but we are looking at drilling that down from not like a police, fire, city hall, full service station, but just fire station only. We don't know that we could get that built for $5 million, but we're hoping that that would be the case. Even that though is going to be a $354,000 annual payment. So even though there's not $354,000 left on this little bit of surplus from the sales tax generation, it would be some of it potentially. So those are the three various options you could use with the 200,000. It would not be excess sales tax revenue generated for no purpose. It could actually strategically be used to bring the mill down, which would be an important factor with that money. Here's a negative impact to this that we also want to consider. We want to present information from both sides equally, and that would be that it could obviously have a negative impact on local retailers. Valley Center's new tax rate would be 9.5%, and except for special districts, that would mean Valley Center would have the highest tax rate in the area until the year 2036, when that 1% for the rec center does fall off. So there's just an idea there of what the tax rates are currently. And again, except for like the CIDs and the star bonds, just for the base sales tax for the other communities, that would put Valley Center at 9.5, and that could be a negative impact to our retailers. And so we certainly want to consider that perspective as well. This is something the council cannot do. You can pass a resolution to call for the question on the ballot, but you can't pass it. It would have to be passed by the public. And so basically this gives you just a quick outline here. To put it on the November ballot, we do have to pass a resolution that would need to publish 2 consecutive weeks. And the first publication would have to be not less than 21 days prior to the election. However, which we know the election would be, I believe, November the 3rd this year. However, the county election officer would actually need that information prior to that. And I have been in communication with her. She would need to have a copy of that resolution by August the 19th. It wouldn't have to have the publication dates yet, but she would have to have that information somewhere between the 19th and the 20th. Basically, it would have to be next week prior to meeting again as a council. So right after the 18th, I would have to let her know whether or not this is a consideration. The interesting thing about this option is that it definitely puts the decision of fire services in the hands of Valley Center voters. If the council is considering bolstering and selects the sales tax option for revenue, since the budget has to be certified by October 1st and the election results will not be received until November, if this is a direction that council is going, here's a couple of points of clarification. You will have a decision to make because of the timelines that you're working with. These are the 2 options. You would have to select one if this is an avenue you wanted to pursue. In addition to passing the resolution and getting that to the county election officer, we would have to decide how to prepare the 2027 budget, which is going to be due and required to be certified to the county clerk prior to the results of the election. You can either pass a budget that's fully bolstered to retain fire services in Valley Center at the full mills that we've been discussing, which was 16.99, but with the addition of the part-time incentivizing program, it's now at 17.3 or something. It's very small writing on my page. You could either put that in the budget to guarantee that you can fund fire services locally, or you only put the 10.56 in, which remember we just discussed a minute ago. Either way, you've got to have the 10.56. You put the 10.56 in and pass that budget, which then leaves it 100% in the hands of the taxpayer, that if the taxpayer wants to retain Valley Center Fire Services and pay for a portion of that with sales tax revenue, they would have to carry that vote at the November election. If that vote did not pass and we did not levy to maintain services, you would not have the funding to bolster to a 24/7 station. I'm not going to say you wouldn't have the ability to maintain fire services, but I am going to say you would not have the financial capability to bolster to a 24/7 station and meet all the safety discussion that we have been reviewing for the last several months. So this would be a very important decision. I do want to give the council time really quick before I move on to ask questions about that, because I just want to make sure I've been very clear about it. Sometimes when I know the information, I glaze over things quickly. We have a
Ben's
full
question.
understanding of this.
Ben,
Sandra, if we did not put this on the ballot in November, do we have another option to have a special election or?
Okay, so you have 3 opportunities to put that question to the public legally now because of statutory change. You only have 3 opportunities now. You can't just call a special election anymore anytime. You can, I think it's the first Tuesday in March, or the primary, or the general. So your first Tuesday in March would be your next opportunity, which would also mean Valley Center would have to bear the Sedgwick County cost on that for that question on the March ballot.
And how much does that cost?
I asked the election officer that. She was able to look up a community that's a little bit, a district area that's a little bit bigger than ours. That was $7,000. Ours would be less because we're a little bit smaller, but we weren't sure exactly. So less than 7,000.
Okay.
Somewhere in that ballpark.
But so it would be advantageous to put it on the November ballot if we were to do that to save the money to pay for a special election.
Yes,
Okay.
from a financial standpoint. The advantage there would also be from an operational standpoint. If it's not placed on the 2027 budget and we pass a budget of just 10.56, and then whenever we put that question on the ballot, we risk I think what we risk is managing aid probably at that point. We would just have to try to mitigate how we're going to perform fire services in the interim of not having funding guarantees.
That's all I had for right now. Sorry.
Matt?
I think the challenge is using sales tax. It's not a reliable source. If we're going to fund, I mean, is this going to fund wages, equipment, everything? So I look back when we done the rec center sales tax, Builders First Source is just built. So they come onto the tax rolls. And I looked and it's been pretty steady with them. Does this account for the raises each year and insurance rates going up? I mean, if the sales tax stays stagnant, how do we accommodate the raises these guys are going to get?
Yeah, this is a snapshot. And so that 200 little plus thousand extra that I mentioned, I probably skipped over it too fast, but eventually you're going to need to use that for operational as well. And then there will come a point probably. Obviously, we know from the modeling that you just saw that traditionally our costs will increase. At what rate? That's just to be determined based on what Finance Director Miller modeled earlier. He took what he had seen in the past and modeled us up. So you are correct in that we've modeled that up. Our costs do tend to go up. The sales tax, it has been also climbing. I don't know about proportionately as equal as what our expenses have increased, but there has been a slight increase in the sales tax as well. When we looked at that modeling, obviously last year and this year was higher than normal. We also know that was because of all of the storm damage that created a fictitious revenue pool. If you looked at that, you would think we had much more than $1 million. So we really tried to stick with what was the common percentage climb without that extra sales tax generation. But yeah, the offsets of those two, I don't know at what year the expense will pass the revenue generation. There is the potential of that.
And that's probably safe to say that Builders First Source is probably the highest tax generator in this town, probably.
I wouldn't say that without looking it up.
Oh,
I'll
but
let you-
what if they closed, someone bought them out and
Yeah.
they moved them to El Dorado? That's a lot of tax stuff we just lost. That's now our fire department and stuff is dependent on sales tax. So now it's a big part of it's gone.
Yeah, so I mean, I do want to be clear on that point as well. An ad valorem property tax is something you can levy. A sales tax is based upon sales. It's not a guaranteed number. The best that we can do is look at the modeling it has generated, but with the understanding that it is a moving number based upon sales of the community. It's not a guaranteed number.
I mean, I don't mind doing sales tax for like streets, water lines. If we don't get sales tax enough to do $1 million worth of streets, then we do what we got. But tying wages to it. And a couple of people told me, well, that's how Derby does it. Derby, their fire tax is tied to equipment and infrastructure. It's not tied to wages. All the Derby and firefighters are on their general budget, whatever you want to call it. They only fund the equipment and buildings. They do not, they've moved everyone off that because during COVID, everyone got the stimulus money. They went crazy and hired people, and then the stimulus money ran out. Oh, well, now what do we do with these people? We can't afford to pay them. And that's kind of what I'm scared with the sales tax, is that's going to happen. And then we're kind of caught with our pants down, if you want to say it like that.
So, I mean, regardless of what you're funding with sales tax, you risk the potential of, even if it's a project, you risk the potential of your sales tax declining, and then you have to increase property tax to cover the difference. It's the same thing, even if it's a project and it's a bond payment of a project that you've done. If your sales tax decreases in revenue generation, you're going to have to make that up, generally in mills, if you can't find an alternate source.
Well, that was my next question. If it falls short of funding it with the sales tax, then do we have to come back and raise the mill levy up to offset that?
You do, and what I would say to that is, and Clint's actually going to get into that here in a minute, where he's going to show you what that sales tax injection does to that 5-year stretch of ad valorem tax that we projected just a minute ago. Maybe I'll let him present that, because I think that might show itself a little bit, and then let's circle back to that question. Let's see what that actually does when we ingest that in, and then we're going to talk more about that.
Ben?
Just make a comment, Mayor and Council. This packet does not contain all of the images that are. Thank you. You're welcome.
Sandra, I just want to make sure I'm clear on this to clarify what Matt's talking about. We are not talking about fully funding fire with a sales tax. We're talking
Fully
about
funding? No.
split between what we currently have that we collect. So we could tie wages and everything else to our ad valorem taxes that we collect now and use the sales tax for equipment, whatever. It's not all coming out of the sales tax. I just want to make sure I'm clear on
No,
that.
it's not, but it's 900,000 plus out of the property tax, and it would be 700,000 plus out of sales
So
tax.
just a
But
little
those
less than
are
50-50.
operational dollars.
Okay.
Well, they're operational dollars. Some of that is, the fire truck payment. But a lot of that is going to be health insurance. And I mean, the wage chunk is so large in that what I couldn't do is sit here and tell you that we could cover all of those things that would make sure our employees are safe under the 900 without doing the math. And then even at that, we would need to, I don't think you're going to be able to cover all the things you need to cover to make sure we have employment covered under 900. But I need to verify that.
But it's not 100% being funded off that sales tax with this proposal.
No.
Like 60,
not-
40 out of ad valorem and property, or the sales tax. One of my thoughts on this is if we propose this, it allows the citizens to vote on it, and everyone's voice can be heard that votes, and it's not just 8 of us making the decision. But I also think that using sales tax dollars is smart, because then the people of this community are not shouldering the load of this fully, the property owners. People that are coming into the town using services, buying things, they also are needing the services. They have car wrecks, medical calls, people that come in for sporting events, minus a house fire, but the majority of our calls are medical calls. Like, if they're getting into some skin in the game of paying for it when they're in our city using it. So I like having it's not fully funded by ad valorem tax dollars.
It definitely shifts the funding mechanism and splits it between two sources that are very different in generation.
Amy?
A couple of questions. First of all, do we have a sunset date on the current 1% sales tax for the rec center?
2036, I believe.
Okay. And in your figures, you gave some options for that additional 200,000 a year. Still didn't cover what would be potentially a payment for a new fire station, right? Because that's more
It's
like 354.
340 some thousand a year.
So where would that extra 150K come from to pay for that?
That's when the models that Finance Director Miller showed you earlier, that last column that had that in there that showed the increase to the taxpayer.
So it would be additional taxes.
I mean, it'd be splitting hairs just a little bit
Right.
at the moment because we don't know if we would take part, we don't know if in 2036 or in 5 years, I should say, when we modeled in the new fire station. I don't know, like I said earlier, if at that point there's even still 200 left in there by the time operational costs increase. I'm not sure if I can't guarantee you that between now and 5 years from now, there's still a $200,000 cushion because as operational costs increase, that's going to get smaller. So there could be some there to put toward that payment, but even at it, as it is today, the total amount of excess revenue there isn't enough to cover the payment annually. So either way, you're going to need to levy and increase the mill.
And that 1% sales tax for Valley Center residents, that's not just purchasing things in Valley Center, right? It's purchasing anything online. And it's also purchasing vehicles and furniture. Is that correct?
Well, I wasn't
Even if it's
prepared to
in
give
Wichita?
a full presentation on what is applicable to that tax, but yes, most of those are point of sale based. And that applies, of course, now with the laws online. So it's sales tax and compensating use tax. So if it's something that was mail order, but that's origination is here. So anything that's applicable to a sales tax to Valley Center would apply.
Okay. And that additional 1% would put us at 9.5, which is above any of the local communities, and it's like 2 percentage points above Wichita. I think that would discourage commercial investment in Valley Center, which in turn increases our tax base and helps spread it out more. So I feel like there's a twofold negative to using that option, but guess that's just a comment, not a question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jeannie?
So I have two questions. On number one, you said potentially double charging the citizens for 3/4 of the year. Can you clarify that?
Yes, strong wording that I used there in my rush. Basically, if you pass the budget at what was 16.99, now 17.3. Forgive me if that's wrong. I need to look back at that slide on a bigger sheet. But if you pass the budget, levying that money, and we submit that and certify it to the county clerk on October 1st, you can't redo that. You can't change that later. That's going to go out in the tax bills. That's going to go out in the November tax bills that are due in December and May, and that's going to be the amount of money that gets levied. And if the sales tax passes, that's also going to become enacted. So in April 1 of 2027, the sales tax is going to start being assessed. So we'll have two active revenue generation sources.
Okay. And my second question was, if you prepare number one and it's 16.99 mils, aren't we all going to pay 16.3 if the county takes us over anyway? Isn't that what the number is?
Yep, that would be option 2. Yes. Yes. So this is just focusing on option 3, but yes.
But what I'm saying is, if they're basically the same. I mean, in other words, we want to keep them here, we do 16.9 and get a sales tax passed, or we give them to the county and we pay 16.3, whatever.
16.75.
75, okay, so,
The mill number is very similar, yes, but giving it to the county and having them levy, which again wouldn't happen in 27, to be clear about that,
right,
but so that it wouldn't happen in 27. But if you're saying compare the mills, the county's mill would be the 16.75. Ours was 16.99, now is 17.3. But the difference would be is if the county's mill came into play, there wouldn't be a sales tax also. Whereas if we put that in our budget, even though the number is close to each other, our budget would levy that much money, and then the sales tax would generate 3/4 of a year worth of sales tax as well. Am I making sense on that? But
I don't think I'm making sense.
Oh, sorry. The number, the mill number is very close to the same. Maybe I can do it this way. Let's go back to option 1. Option 1, we fully bolster. We're going to put 17.3 mills in the budget, that's going to be levied in 2027. We bolster, we have fire. Going to option 2, let me explain that one for a minute. Going to option 2, in 2027, we would still just levy our 10.56 mils, and we would be under a contract then with the county to where they're starting to provide 24/7 aid to us already, and we're going to pay them the value of these 10.56 mils. Option 3, the council can, because option 3 is the sales tax option. So now we're talking about the sales tax being involved. And that's where, again, the council can either levy, either way, you got to levy the 10.56. So you can either levy the 10.56 and just see what happens with the sales tax, or you levy the 17.3 and go for the sales tax. But again, you would have double revenue generation potentially occurring.
Matt?
On the one thing where you brought up about the comparable to surrounding communities, I took Sedgwick County and Wichita out because you're not comparing apples to apples, but Park City, Goddard, Derby, and Mays, they either have a highway going through them or they're on Mays Road. Whole lot more traffic. Someone going up interstate's not going to say, oh, let's stop at Casey's in Valley Center and get gas. There's no sign on the interstate saying there's. So they're going to still stop there. I don't see us getting, unless they come here for a basketball tournament or soccer game, football game, I don't think we're going to get that much more traffic going through here to generate that much more sales tax.
Well, and again, the 1% $950,000 revenue generation that we're modeling off of is existing sales tax revenue. So unless the 9.5% detours someone from spending here, it should generate the 950,000 because we know that it does today, regardless of geographic location.
And then God forbid, if COVID, something like that happens again, shuts the country down for a year, then what do we do? There ain't no one buying something. There ain't no restaurants are closed. I mean, I hope that never happens again, but you have to think of that stuff.
It is valid. It is not a guaranteed revenue stream.
Amy?
So Sandra, towards the end, you said that if the 1% sales tax did not pass, we cannot bolster, correct?
If the council approves a budget with just the 10.56 mils,
Right.
we wouldn't have the financial means to go to a 24/7 station internally.
Okay.
I can't tell you what to do at that point. All I can tell you
Right.
is you wouldn't have the financial means to do a 24/7 station.
Which means that we would have to maintain what we have now, and our automatic aid is expiring September 23rd, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Sandra, did you say you guys were going to present like mill levies with the tax? Okay.
You
And I
ready
will
for that?
wait.
Okay.
Okay, I have one question and 2 comments. If number 2 up there, the
Oops, sorry.
option where we approve the budget at 10.5 and we have the mill levy or the sales tax approved, when does that sales tax kick into that portion of that budget?
So if we pass the budget with 10.56 mils and we go to the ballot and the public votes majority yes, or the yes wins, then we prepare the documents and submit them to the Department of Revenue, and the revenue generation starts April 1, 2027. So in 2027, we would be budgeting in 3/4 of a year worth of revenue generation off the sales tax.
Okay. So this council has 2 major decisions to make. One, which budget to approve, and one to ask the citizens for a city sales tax.
Well, I would actually say this council has 3 decisions to make. One, because options 1 and 3 is maintaining Valley Center Fire Department internally. And option 2 is going with Fire District 1. I think that's the first decision that has to be made. Then if the first decision is that you're going to join Sedgwick County Fire District 1, then we start talking about that transition and you're going to levy 10.56 mils. If that first decision, you decide to bolster and retain Valley Center Fire, then you have the second decision, which is how are you going to levy? Are you going to pay for this completely off of property taxes, or are you going to consider the sales tax model? Then if you consider the property taxes, we're going to prepare a budget with 17.3 mils and we're going to move on. But if you're going to consider the sales tax, then you got the third decision, which is which of these options are you going to do? Are you going to leave it? And let me say that again, because that was a mouthful. Let me just recap. Let me say it again. So first decision, are you joining Sedgwick County Fire District 1 or are you bolstering and maintaining? Number 1. If you bolster, if you join Sedgwick County, we're moving on to a different decision. We're putting 10.56 mils in the budget. If you bolster, are you doing it with property tax money or property tax and sales tax combo? If you're just doing property tax, we're putting 17.3 in the budget. We're moving on. If you're doing it with sales tax, we have to send it to the election, and you have to decide, are you putting 10.56 in or 17.3? Did that make more sense? I should have had a slide up of that.
That still boils down to 2 questions to me. We either tax a property tax, raise the mill levy to 17 point something and approve that budget, or we approve the budget at 10.56 and pass a sales tax resolution that goes to the citizens that says if we pass it, we have a fire department. If we don't pass it, it goes to the county. I mean, that's 2 decisions. So that's kind of what I'm understanding anyway, with all the figures and all the stuff going on.
All the fluff,
It
yes.
still boils down to those 2 items right there. We either pass a budget Tuesday night with a 16 or 17.1 budget and say we're funding our fire department, or we pass it at 10.56 and let the citizens decide whether they're going to vote for a 1-cent sales tax to help fund the fire department.
Well, to be clear, Mayor, those 2 options occur after you decide if you're going to Sedgwick County Fire District 1 or you're retaining Valley Center Fire
Correct.
District.
Yeah. Jeannie.
So if we just don't do anything and the Sedgwick County takes us over, what will Sedgwick County be charging us?
And I want to be clear that I know what you're meaning. When you say
The
Sedgwick,
mills.
The mill,
The mills.
16.
do you mean if
Yeah,
Valley
it-
Center?
like the county came in, they already said, oh, we're going to keep our mill levy the same, y'all going to stay the same, you're going to be 16.75. Is that what we're going to be charged if we let the county take us?
Well, I'm not the county. I can only say what we have been told, and that is that the levy that they have announced to us is 16.75. They've announced a long-term plan to maintain that levy or reduce it, but I cannot guarantee that. So I guess if I'm following and you're saying, because I got lost when you said take us over. If you're saying that the council makes a decision to join the district, our citizens will be levied at, as far as we are aware, the 16.75.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to spit out.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes.
That's what I was trying to spit out. And
Yeah.
so if we do number 1 and we keep them here and we levy 16.99, 17.1, whatever you said, and we put the sales tax on the ballot and the citizens want it, they want the fire department to stay here, then they'll be willing to pay a sales tax of 1 cent, but they're still going to pay 16.99 or 17.1 versus if we don't do anything and the county takes us, we're going to pay 16.75 So, I mean,
Well, forgive me, I just want to make sure, since we're in public meeting, that I'm answering correctly. Because if we don't do anything, the county still cannot take us. Like,
I understand,
Yeah.
that, but I mean, if we agree to join District 1,
okay,
all of us property owners are going to pay 16.75.
yes. And that is what has been reported to us.
Right.
Yes.
So if we keep it here to bolster and we put in the budget 16.99 and put the sales tax on the ballot and it passes, then my property taxes are going to be basically the same as if the county took me or if we stayed here and we passed the 1 cent sales tax with a 16.9.
They would be basically the same. I'm going to say this loosely, and I don't want to muddy the waters. I'm going to answer it one way, then I'm going to explain it. They will be the same the first year, even though that's not true. They will be the same the first year, but what we modeled just a moment ago for you is what is the 5-year projection? That was something that actually came up in comments after the public or the town hall meeting, was that we showed the examples of 1 year or the first year of differences, but we didn't show the differences going out 5 years. So we tried to do that tonight. So the first year, yes, and I'll try to be clear so that I'm being clear about the costs to the community. So if you bolster, you have the $300,000 still that needs to be paid for. And then yes, if you bolstered fully based off of property taxes, we'd have 17.3 mils. If you bolster. If you join the county, it's going to be 16.75 mils. Over time, our mill will be higher. We got up to 18 mils in the 5th year on our projected models. They're still at 16.75. I don't know that for sure. I just know that's what's been presented. And we wouldn't have control over that, so I don't know. The clarity in that, just so I'm being clear, I said it that way to make it easier to answer, but the clarity of that would be that in 2027, technically, if you join the district or if you leave it all to the sales tax, we're only going to levy the 10.56. And Sedgwick County cannot levy their mill until 2028. So in 2027, the Valley Center taxpayers are only going to pay the 10.56 mils if we join the district or if we put it on the sales tax and you decide to go that direction. So I answered, because I think what you were after is that the cost is about the same in the year. So I tried to answer it that way, but just to be clear, those years actually cross over 2 different budget years.
Right, and we can't predict what their budget will be, even though what they say, I've never had my my property tax stay the same. I don't know, maybe they have, I haven't.
Correct, that we would have no
And they can
authority
jack it up
over
if
that
they
mill.
wanted to. I mean, we don't know what they're gonna do. So we could have control of our own destiny if we chose one of these options.
Maintaining local control gives you the ability to levy the dollars that you would like to levy.
Matt,
Since we're talking about the county, a couple people, 2 or 3, I don't know how many people, brought up about they don't trust the county hiring our people, building a station here. Have we ever got a kind of an agreement from them saying that we're going to do this?
So we've had verbal response, and I do have a draft MOU as of today.
Oh, MOU.
That because knowing that we were coming in here this evening, and again, I still don't have direction from council, so we're still working on all 3 options on a regular basis. And so I knew that if option 2 is pursued, we have a very short, limited timeline. I feel like I'm talking ahead of my presentation now, but we have a very short timeline on securing a written document necessary to protect the interests of Valley Center. And so I've opened those discussions even informally. So I do have a draft MOU to review, and it does address Valley Center's fire station being located here, and it does address employment opportunities for our firemen. It's a draft document, and we have not had legal review it yet, but we are starting that process in the event that that's a direction, because we're all running out of time. So all staff is trying to work ahead at this point.
So we have a draft stating that they will do this. It just needs to be.
Reviewed, and we need to check legal language to make sure everyone is comfortable and satisfied. But the document has been started.
any other questions or comments? Gina's got a question.
Is Sedgwick County Fire District 1 our only option? What about Wichita Fire Department?
Only option for automatic aid?
Yeah.
I'm going to let Public Safety Director Newman answer that.
We have actually made a request twice for auto aid from Wichita. The response is they want to wait and see what happens first between us and Fire District 1. So we don't have an answer on that.
Want to bite the hand that feeds them. Matt?
So you just brought up auto aid. Auto aid's off the table for county regardless, right? Or am I wrong? They're gonna do mutual, but auto aids,
So we know that auto aid will be in play if we make the decision. Remember, there's this lag time there for a year. If you decide to join the district, there is a lag time there for a year legally from when they can start levying, but there would be a contract put in play in the interim as they would start 24/7 services as soon as possible. So in that respect, auto aid is I know that is going to be a given. If we bolster, the only thing that I can tell you is at the town hall meeting, I know that Commissioner Beatty confirmed that auto and mutual aid would be back on the table. That's the only confirmation I have is at the town hall meeting.
back on the table is not guaranteed. They're willing to talk about it or it's a done deal.
I can just reply with what comment we received at the town hall meeting.
Amy?
Have they give us any indication as to whether the bolstering plan we have would meet their expectations? Because they said if you bolster, we would consider it.
I think that once we have direction from council, we can package that up and present that to them. I think throughout the conversations in the last few months, I cannot speak for them. I can tell you that we've continually pursued the option of what do we have to do to meet the standards to have a continued participation agreement. I would have to think that if we're doing all of this to meet those safety standards and provide a 24/7 workforce that's trained and reliable with the efficient staff trained that's on scene as required. I can't speak for them, but that's what we've been told needs to happen in order to continue agreements.
Does that include them coming as some of those personnel on auto aid?
Well, auto aid would be, if we had a secured auto aid agreement with Sedgwick County Fire District 1, that would include them coming.
They're not expecting us to meet that standard without their assistance, right?
I'll defer.
So again, nothing's in writing. Verbally, we've been told 10 and 10. Verbally, we've been told make it close to 10. So we don't have a definite answer on that.
And right now we're looking at 5 to 6, right?
That for the
2 plus 2
guaranteed,
plus
and then any additional full-time or part-time personnel that can still respond as well. We may have 12 to 15. I can't answer that. And
While you're up there, can you please explain to us the NFPA 1720 versus 1710 and how it applies to us versus the county?
so not very well without some of that information in front of me. I think I can certainly do that more, but I think there's different standards for depending on your size, the size of the community, the makeup of your department. If you're 100% career department versus a volunteer or part-time department. So the standards, the standards change depending on the makeup of your department, essentially.
I did look up that information, and Valley Center would fall under NFPA 1720 from what I read, which is a combination of career and volunteer or part-time, sorry. That NFPA guideline says 10 firefighters in 10 minutes, 80% of the time with 80% compliance. And Sedgwick County is NFPA 1710, which has a different expectation because it's a career department, and that is 15 to 17 firefighters with an 8-minute response time 90% of the time. I've said from the get-go, my focus is on safety, and I did speak with lots of people in the community, including Valley Center firefighters, Sedgwick County, Wichita firefighters, and I just wanted to read 2 comments that I got from family that said, if it were your home, your family, or your loved one calling 911, wouldn't you want the fastest response, the greatest manpower, and the strongest resources available to help them? And I had a second one say, I like the idea of if my house catches on fire, I would have 16 plus guys immediately respond from the county. So that kind of said it all for me, because that's a quicker response. It's more people, more backup,
You
and
said in 17 and 8 minutes?
15 to 17 in 8 minutes. That's what the NFPA 1710
Okay,
says.
so to be clear on that, we're talking about 3 Fire District 1 employees in Valley Center.
Right?
We have another 5 at Station 32. They will likely be here in 4 to 5 minutes. The rest is coming from Mays, Bel Air, Wichita. That's not going to happen in 8 minutes.
But they will all respond as soon as the alarm goes off, correct?
They will respond. It just won't, they will not make 15 to 17 in 8 minutes.
They won't send 15 guys at the same time. They'll respond the first
They're
unit.
not going to get 15 guys here in 8 minutes.
Yeah. They will respond their first unit and then decide if they need more help. They don't send
Right.
15 guys to a fire unless it's already considered a major structure fire.
So they wouldn't send the 3 from Valley Center plus like 5 others.
So
Okay.
Ben,
I just wanted to comment on what Amy was talking about. It's not 100% fail safe if we join the county. We're gonna trade off what we're going into with what they are proposing. 3 personnel on duty in Valley Center. Correct?
That's what we've been told.
Okay, that's correct. And then they're gonna, if we have a call, they're gonna send from what's the
Park City,
Park City would be
77th Street,
Station
closest
32.
one.
32,
If they're available.
right? But it's no different than what we have now with the agreements. So if we get to full staffing and we get the agreements in, we would still have the same coverage, but we'd have local control over our fire department. And the county doesn't, if they have a call, they are not sending everybody from county. They have an aid agreement with Wichita. They're sending Wichita people. So it's not just that they're going to take over and we're going to be all taken care of by the county. Everyone relies on everybody else in their area. Correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Lloyd. Cinder, you have anything else? I'd probably like to get a couple.
Yeah.
Getting kinda
we-
late.
I
Get a
mean,
couple
we still
public
have, yeah, we have
opinions
some
and-
slides yet to go. Finance Director Miller does have some more to present, and then I have a closing, but if you want to pause, it's up to you.
Can we pause and just get the
Yep.
public input and then, because I've got 2 here. And then if they don't get what they want, they can, if they get what they want, then they can go home. Lou, state your name, address, and we give you 3 minutes, sir, please. Or
Good evening,
less,
Mayor,
preferably.
Council, Lou Cicerello, 1041 North Old Trail Circle, Valley Center, Kansas. Couple questions I had have now increased. My first question to the council and staff, has any of you actually seen the wording in the existing agreements? Okay, that's what I thought, because I was unable to attain it as well. My second question, the follow-up of that is, we are well aware of what the county's trying to do. I said in the public forum, it was a money grab, but it's really a bullying tactic where they know the budget restrictions and everything you had talked about today and the timing of how that all works. Has anybody approached the rest of the cities and discussed taking the county to court to at least file an injunction to give the cities at least till the end of next year to make this decision properly, as opposed to a rushed decision, which you're going to be forced to make right now. So those are my first two comments. My next question is for Lloyd, Chief, sorry. I know for a fact that medical calls outweigh fire response, right? Do you actually have those percentages? Is it 80-20, 90-10? I know you probably don't, and I'm sorry to throw this on you like that. Because my thought pattern, let me just finish my thought. My thought pattern is, if the majority of our calls are medical and the amount of response when it comes to fire is minimal and has worked for years and more so lately with what we currently have, my suggestion is, and again, this is kind of why you need to try to get this pushed out further, but I don't see why a mutual auto agreement with Wichita would be out of the question. As we've already talked, right? The closest station here is Park City. The next closest ones are the one in Bel Air on 45th Street and the one in Mays on 53rd Street. And to kind of go to what you were saying, I drove that because my in-laws live in Mays, doing the speed limit, right? Which is 55 and then 50 and 45 down into Mays. It took 20 minutes, okay? Maybe 15 because I stop sign. A fire engine fully loaded with water probably doesn't travel more than 65, 70 miles an hour wide open, okay? There is absolutely no way, and I brought this up in the public forum, that the county can cover that, okay? They know that, and they kept throwing that. The chief kind of admitted that, but they kept throwing that in everybody's faces, which I just kept getting infuriated for because they can't cover it, okay? I also made a point of a matter of, let's say, your one option you have is, okay, we're going to go to Fire District 1 and you can't have our stuff, okay? We're going to go sell it on the public market because we'll make more money, right? They still can't cover it. That would make it even worse to not only for Valley Center, but everybody north Sedgwick County that 32 is responsible to cover on an initial call. So now I'll let you, if you want to address the calls versus medical calls versus fire. But that's where I was going with all that.
I do not have the exact breakdown as far as percentages. I can tell you, last year we ran just under 1,000 calls. And of course that's Valley Center and the 3 townships. And structure fire calls in the city, we're looking at 10 to 12. A majority are going to be, the vast majority are medical calls. We get other calls, checking odors, lines down, car accidents, grass fires. I mean, we do get other types of calls, but by and large, the vast majority are medical calls.
Thank you. So again, status quo with aid from Wichita would make sense because I didn't finish my answer. I do. And Chief, you said that they had 5 at 32. I believe during the town hall, they said that was going to be a 3, that they're also only have a 3-man at 32. No? Okay. I could have sworn I heard that. That's fine. So again, the other piece of this, and it goes with the budgeting, right? And this kind of addresses, Councilmember Daniels kind of touched on all of that in the funding options. And as you know, I understand how this works. I understand the budgeting. I understand the dates. And again, in my opinion, the 5 cities are getting turned over by the, I don't want to use the real words that are coming through my mind right now, which is why I'm hesitating, is trying to do a number on them, on all of you, right? The one question I have about the taxes, let's say we do because you guys have to make this decision, which is really terrible, that you have to do this before you know what the sales tax is. You fund it full, right? With the assumption the sales tax passes, what you've discussed. And I think this is kind of where you were going. Once the sales tax kicks in April, we still have a gap before we can actually have money coming in that would cover that, correct? If I'm not mistaken. I mean, April 1 hits, the tax goes up. You're not going to be able to get enough money into that sales tax till farther down the road, right? Again, something I'm well aware of. And there where I think where you went with like the double whammy is true for a specific amount of time. And again, don't know what that number will be, right? None of us can. But my thought would be, and I know this is possible and I'm not the finance guy. At one point when you can kick that in and it's not through the end of the year or not at the next budget discussion, which it probably would end up being actually, there's always an option of rebates, right? If for some reason, Councilmember Stam talked about what if things go down? Well, what if things start going up, right? There's two sides to every coin. And I'm not going to get into that. I'm just saying, the sales tax revenues could go up more than we expect as well, because of inflation.
Sorry, Lou, you're gonna have to start wrapping it up.
All right.
buddy.
So those were actually the main points I wanted to make. I seriously would request consideration to first read what the document says to see if there's something that, an attorney can work through this, or at least file an injunction to cause a delay. You guys got to make a better decision, a more timed decision than a haste decision, which you're all forced into right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Leroy? Okay. All right. Let's continue with our presentation then. Can I give you 3 minutes? No, I'm just kidding.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. I'm going to try to be a little more brief because I know this is kind of going long, but this next model is simply now Cinder has presented the 1% sales tax idea to you. What are the pros and cons of this 1% and what did this kind of start doing to us on a 5-year look? So we still have that same essentially 17.48 mils to cover our fire department in a bolstered state to meet the county standards. However, now I have $950,000 in sales tax revenue coming in a year. And as you can see on that top line, those mills, that's what I need to still cover within my city budget. This is going to be what we are going to be charging our citizens in ad valorem dollars in addition to the 1% sales tax. So this is the deficit that we're going to be discussing now. So as you can see, first of all, top line, the mills have come down substantially. It was previously at 17.48 in 2027. It's come down below 8 now. The dollars are beneath that. The next line is Valley Center, essentially where we are now, that $302 on a $250,000 house. What is our new residential rate going to be? And as you can see, we now have a negative number, which means we're going to have savings. That makes sense because, again, we're offsetting it with the 1% sales tax. People's property taxes would actually decrease on that 1% model. And you can kind of see going across, that number gets smaller. The reason why is that top line, the mills continue to go up, as I talked about earlier. The biggest driver for us is health insurance, but you also have salary increases and just other general fire expenses that are going to increase over time. The next line down is what it would do to a commercial building at $300,000. Again, it's going to be tax savings for that $300,000 business that will slowly be decreasing over time. The green column is Sedgwick County Fire Department. These are essentially the same numbers I presented to you earlier. And then the bottom numbers are just the difference. Basically Valley Center residential versus county residential. And again, it is going to be savings that over time slowly starts decreasing. The next line is the exact same model that I just presented here, but we've now added in a $5 million building starting in 2031. So kind of jumping back up to that second column, 86, it's dropping. Now we're back up to $62 in additional tax over this year's number for citizens starting in 2031. Same thing with the commercial district. And again, as you can still compare it to the county, we are going to be saving money, with this model. even into those final years, but of course, it's a decreasing model. Again, they get to hold their rate the same. Ours is going to slowly be increasing over time. So the last one, and I again want to apologize to everybody today. Lloyd Cinder and I have worked a ton of hours this week putting this together, but we really needed about another 45 minutes to put this packet together. I apologize, it printed on one page. The next one is basically a missing slide, so I'm going to hop over real quick and pull it up. This is the one thing that we did not get in the packet, and I apologize. And here it is, just the 1% impact with and without the fire station. The first column, again, remember my baseline is we're going to have a $1.5 million shortage that I presented to council in early July last month. Under this 1% plan, with no fire station, that does decrease it essentially $555,000 in the positive direction. That's a less of a deficit that we have to cover. Now, again, I'm still concerned about these deficits because I do not know if bond and interest, when we get 3% capped, is going to be included or excluded. If it is excluded, we can simply, we have the options of either increasing revenue, decreasing our expenses, or passing that deficit that we have each of those years onto our citizens through ad valorem or some other type of tax situation. The next one gets a little more difficult when we add a fire station in there. Those payments start up. I start getting to some very large deficits from 2030, kind of fading out in 2038. I think that would be my professional opinion to you is that's going to be a lot for us to undertake. And if we choose to go to keeping it with a 1% sales tax, I think we need to try to delay that new fire station for as long as we possibly can to give ourselves time through about 2035, 2036 to pay off as much of this debt as we can. Our financial situation greatly, greatly improves starting about 2032, but it's really about 2034 that we're going to have quite a bit of additional tax ability to take on these kind of new debts and large projects. So I'm going to real quickly go back to the other slide.
Glenn, is that a typo at the bottom where it says 2026?
Yeah, it's 2036.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry. So these final few pages are just essentially a summary of everything I've been talking to you about, the positives of the 1% sales tax model. It does raise $950,000 in sales per year. 700 of that would offset fire expenses directly in general fund. 91,600 would go to emergency equipment, $20,000 for a cushion in general fund. It would cover another additional fire truck payment, and it would cover the existing bond payment on the fire truck that we're currently geo-bonded as of 2024. There is no fire station in this model. And we did have a little bit of good news. I told you previously we had a $1.5 million last month. I told you it's always going to be a working model. And as I get new information, that it will go up and down. We did have about $125,000 in good news start coming into the model since I talked to you about that last month. TIF revenue right now is running a little ahead of schedule compared to the model that I showed you. So that 1.5 is really down about 125,000 better right now in the latest models. Next one is the new $5 million station, 1% with the $5 million fire station. Everything above that I just listed stays the same. Payments would be around $354,000 a year financed over 20 years. And I believe a 3.7% interest rate is what we modeled. Again, that revenue deficit jumps up to 3.6 million through 2038. That could be a very, very challenging number to try to overcome. We would have between a 1 to 6 mil yearly shortage through 2038. We'd have to figure out how to take care of either through taxes, increase revenue, or decreasing expenses. We would also still have $200,000 to $390,000 in startup costs. We've not talked about that much tonight, but there is going to be remodeling costs and a number of additional one-time costs if we choose to keep our fire department and get our building essentially ready to handle, overnight crews and everything else. Next one down, no 1% model, no new fire station. I decreased the TIF model one level. We all saw how high that mill levy got last month or last council meeting. I think we would probably be looking at a scenario if we try to do this strictly in ad valorem dollars where we would see a slowdown in our housing market. That's the opinion that I keep. Everything I model keeps showing that I think we would just be pushing our mill rate too much higher compared to everybody else around us. And I'm not sure they would want to move here until that corrected itself back out somewhere down the road. Additional fire expenses, $749,000. And that model, of course, does have a new fire truck budgeted. Model pushes the revenue deficit up to $2.8 million through 2036. And of course, we'd have the larger property taxes. Last one, no 1% tax model plus a new fire station. This is the one that really kind of started getting a little out of whack. Additional expenses are a $749,000 model. Does have a new fire truck, new fire station added at $354,000 per year. The revenue deficit jumps up to $8.99 million, and our largest deficit would be over $1 million in a year. I just don't think this is a viable option for us to consider. And I'll let Cinder kind of finish it up here. Any questions for me on what I know we've been.
You had a slide at our last meeting with our mill levy skyrocketing without using the sales tax. And forgive me if I missed it, but what does our mill levy snapshot look like without, is that what you just had up there were you able to keep it flat with the 1 cent?
With the 1 cent, our mill levy would come down substantially because again, now that fire number up there goes from 17, which was in the model last week. Now we're back below 8. So you're almost dropping almost 10 mils off that kind of number. So that last presentation, I think we were around 72 in 2026 dollars. We would be in the high 60s in 2027 dollars, and you could subtract about 10 mils off that number. So we've moved back in that somewhere in the upper 50 range where we're closer to the other cities around us again, if we try to do the 1% sales tax.
And the proposed new building, that's not a time that's set in stone. If we were taking in additional dollars, we could be banking that and start that project. But if we did not, and we had a downturn, we wouldn't have to build a new building
It's just nothing.
on that timeline, correct?
2031 is kind of the first date that Cinder and I thought it could even be feasible if you wanted to get aggressive on it and start it very quickly. So we didn't want to model anything before that time frame, but we did want to start putting it in 2031 so you could see what that impact would be compared to the previous year if we did go that route.
Okay.
Any other questions?
We're almost done, or at least for our part. Just to kind of recap that debt portion really quick, just in looking at kind of comparing it to these options that we're looking at tonight, that option number 3, sales tax potential, it does reduce just even the fire mills by 1.6, which would bring help our mill levy overall. And the option 2, Sedgwick County Fire District, would reduce our bond debt by $1 million because, again, if they purchase the fire truck, then that would wipe some of that off. So those 2 options have the potential of some debt reduction, or at least some mill reduction on one and some debt reduction on the other. Option 1 doesn't necessarily, and then, of course, all the options increase debt if we take on a new station. So I'm going to wrap it up. Just kind of a recap of where we're at and what those action steps look like. We've talked about them a little bit because I did get a little ahead of myself earlier, but we'll just recap to make sure I don't miss anything. So option one, and I kind of want to be clear, listening, to the public comment, which I appreciate so much because we love hearing from the public. You don't have to do something necessarily. I know it was asked earlier, like, are they going to take us over? But I brought this up at the last council meeting, and that is, I will always defer to our public safety director and our fire staff about what is or is not safe. So we have this weight on us about what we're going to do with this decision and these timelines that are very, very short to work under. And yes, we should definitely look into any possibility as to why that timeline isn't legal or could be challenged. At the end of the day, I don't know that we can force them to provide auto aid if we challenge that timeline, but all those things can be investigated. You don't have to make a decision, but we do have to weigh out what is the public safety or the risk factor in safety to our fire department staff and our citizens if we don't. So I do want to say that. I don't want it to go unsaid that you don't have to make these choices in this direction. But you do want to just combine that decision with the safety aspects and see where you can land in a place where we do feel like we're doing a good job on that front. So back to option one. The deadline for the budget publication is September the 1st. So action steps, if we were going to go with option one, is that we have to incorporate the 1.661 million into the budget, hold the special budget special budget meeting the week of August 24th, because Finance Director Miller will have to bring that into you so you can at least get a look at it, because we will have to publish it on the 3rd to hold the hearing on the 15th. We don't want to take it to publishing until you've finalized it and reviewed it. We would have to submit the budget to the county clerk by October 1, and we would have to request automatic aid from some entity or all entities. And we begin the bolstering process ASAP, which does include utilizing $300,000 in general fund cash now, begin remodeling the facility, and start the hiring and training process. Public Safety Director Newman reviewed with you. So in summary, for this option, a $250,000 home, they're going to pay between $500 and $540 per year over the 5-year span. Without the fire station, with the fire station, $500 to $634 over the 5-year span. And we do maintain local control over costs and levies. All costs for fire truck or new fire stations would be added to the city debt load. That would be option one. Option two, if we were joining Sedgwick County Fire District, we need to execute the MOU, preferably before September 1. We're going to have to work very quickly. And of course, it would be at the discretion of Sedgwick County Fire being able to also execute that document that quickly. But that would be to guarantee those important options that we think are critical to make sure are maintained. We would include, if this is option two, we're just going to include the 10.56 mils in the budget, follow the same budget schedule that I just listed in option one. We'd begin the transition process to continue through 2027. Timing on the transitioning personnel into the district would all be discussed, but again, it would be probably more of a model where we enter into an operational contract in that interim 2027 time period. It is my understanding that fire services would start immediately. And that's actually incorrect. That 1/1/28 date where they would assume full responsibility of fire, medical rescue, hazmat, plan review, and inspections, that would actually take place immediately upon the execution of the MOU under operational contract. And of course, automatic aid would be continued. So on this option, where everything I review is going to be on the $250,000 home, just to make it easier, $480 per year over the 5 years with the new station included in that. We do believe that number to be slightly under because of the home valuation increase that would naturally occur, probably as Finance Director Miller explained. There's no $300,000 startup cost, and it would reduce our debt around $1 million. The cost of the station is included. Option three, the deadline to pass that resolution is going to be Tuesday night, which is the main reason that this meeting is happening tonight, because I would have to have a resolution at that meeting ready to be adopted so we could proceed with the entire process here, which is to pass the resolution. Everybody can read that on their own. We have to give notification to the county election officer by August 19th. follow the same budget timeline as option one for the 10.56 mils. This option is going to be about $215 to $263 per year over 5 years for that same home, $215 to $364 with the new station. And in both scenarios, the property tax levy would go down and the sales tax cost to the same taxpayers, and other people that are having retail sales in this area would go up. We still need the $300,000 non-budgeted for this one. We do maintain local control as with option one. And as with option one, the cost for fire truck and new station would be added to the city debt load. Just a clarity on the 24/7 staffing. I just don't want the community to think that whatever decision is made on whichever night you guys decide to do that, that means that immediately we're going to have 24/7 services. If we choose option one or three, we will have to go through the bolstering timeline that was presented earlier. And then if we choose option two, those services would start as soon as we execute the MOU and the operational contract. And I will stand for questions.
Dan?
Sandra, if we don't lower the mill levy and just keep it flat, what does that look like? You talked about with the 1 cent sales tax, and then our mill levy would drop.
In most of my projections, I was keeping the 10.56 in there. I know that what Clint modeled for you is what happens to the same dollar value if you just inject that new revenue. I don't necessarily, I would need to model out at some point, rather than having that decrease as our operational costs increase. That's really more a conversation of how we want to operate over the next 5 years, depending on which decision you guys go, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Matt?
Kind of off-ball question. We're here talking about fire, and they're probably going to get raises if we keep them, raise their salaries up. What's that going to do to our other staff, our parks and public works? Is that going to alienate them, thinking, well, why aren't we worth more money? Well, I mean, do you think that have an impact on our current employees, even city hall people?
So there's a couple of different answers to that. Obviously, injecting a mill levy value that we're talking about, as I mentioned earlier, when we prepared budgets this year, we prepared flat budgets. Because when we're facing a debt load with this mill increase and a potential fire decision with this mill increase, and of course, as you know, we had an employee benefit increase, how can we put even more on top of that? So yes, when we prepared the draft 2027 budget that you guys will see at a special meeting very soon, do we have something in there to accommodate raises for 2027? Minimally, yes. Do we have something to deal with that going forward? No. We don't have asset management in there. We don't have wage increases in there to deal beyond that, because we did not feel like we could add anything else to this budget with what the taxpayers are facing. So every department had needs that we did not meet this year, every one of them, because we just couldn't bear to put any more on the taxpayer. But yes, it impacts what we're able to do operationally.
And someone brought up the question in the last meeting. This could probably rob money from parks and streets if we stay. Do I remember that right or not?
No, I would not say rob money, because it's an increase to the tax levy. So we're generating new revenue for that reason. What we did is we didn't meet some of the needs that are in some of those other departments this year. But I wouldn't say that we robbed money, no.
Rob was probably wrong.
Well, or we did not have to short money we didn't take away from the other departments, because literally there was really nothing there to take. That's why it's an additional mill levy.
Dan?
Sandra, this may be you or Clint, and I don't fully understand all the R&R stuff. Do we have to have our hearing on the date that we listed? And what date is that?
So when we put,
For
so
the
yes.
special yeah.
Yes, when we submitted the notice to exceed the R&R, we included the public hearing date.
And what date is that? Did you have that listed up here earlier? I
Yeah, it's
apologize.
September,
We're really, honestly, we're just out of time on this whole thing. I have to submit to the Ark Valley News by noon on Tuesday. I believe it's either September 2nd or 3rd, what our mill rate is going to be, plus the revenue neutral rate hearing and all that. And that has to then take place at the second council meeting, somewhere around the 15th or 16th, whatever that would be 2 weeks later. I can't push this off any further.
No, I'm not asking you to. I'm just asking for the date that we have set for that hearing.
Tuesday, September 2nd is the day that I have to turn it all in. So we really are going to have another meeting, a fifth meeting this month to present the budget to you based on whichever decision the council makes.
Okay.
That's going to probably be the week of August 24th.
that date is set. We could look that up for you really quick if we don't have it off the top of our head, but it was reported to the county clerk.
Okay. And we have to have the
It's
hearing
September, yes.
on that date. Okay.
Is the 15th. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I do have one more comment. I just don't feel comfortable making a decision like this for the entirety of the city when we have the option of putting a 1 cent sales tax and basically making that the vote, whether they want to keep our fire department or not. Like I said in the past meeting, I had 22 people that contacted me that wanted to keep it. I had 2 people contact me that wanted to go with county, and that was strictly based on the funds. You know, Amy keeps talking about this, and everyone, and the county safety, we're bolstering to get to the safety part. I want the citizens to make the decision ultimately, so that we're not having to make a decision for everyone. People talk about that all the time. Well, why can't we vote on something? Well, they elect us to make decisions, but when we have the opportunity to let more voices be heard, I think that's the way to go with it. I'd like to put that up, and I think that also puts us in a better position financially if the citizens decide they want to keep our fire department. So that's all I have to say. Till next meeting.
Amy?
I also like the idea of our citizens making that vote. My only concern is that auto aid expires, September 23rd, whatever, and the vote is November 4th. And if they chose not to continue, which we don't know for sure, where does that leave us? Because we don't have the funds to support our own. I know that Wichita Fire is in a transition with chiefs right now. They don't have the new chief starting for a few more weeks. So negotiations with them are probably low on their priority list. So I guess that's my biggest concern, is that there's a lot of ifs related to that. But I also like the idea of people making the decision.
Matt?
I just want to comment what Ben was talking about, putting it to a vote. I'd love to put it to a vote, but are all 8,000 people going to come out and vote? You're going to get 11%, 12% people that are going to vote. You're not getting the whole city to vote. I'd love to have everyone vote, but in the election, you never get a big percentage of people showing up to vote on it.
Well, I'm going to finish this with a comment, I think. We've got to make that decision Tuesday. To me, if we put it out for a citizens vote, it's not our decision. Whether 10 people vote or 5,000 people vote, it's the decisions made by the voters. That's the democracy way of doing things. It's an important issue, and I think it'll happen. But this council's got a lot to chew on between now and Tuesday night. So I appreciate everybody's attendance. I appreciate all this gallery of folks we have, and I hope we answered some questions. I know we've got a lot on our plate, so these are the people you have to talk to this week till Tuesday night. So if there's nothing else, I'd just like to get a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, signify by raising your right hand. All opposed, same sign, motion carried.